Hi there, my name is Magstadt and I work with Launch Ministry, and in this video we're going to talk a little bit about emerging adulthood, the age of 18 to 25-year-olds, young people that we work with. We're going to share some of the things that we've learned, some of the characteristics of this generation, and maybe some of the hopeful signs that things are not as bad as they sometimes seem. Many parents and teachers and adults are frustrated when they think of this generation, and there's some good reasons why. The unemployment rates are sky high, so there's a lot of young adults that are either not working or sometimes not even trying to work. There's so many young adults that are living at home. The rates of emerging adults living back with their parents are as high as they've ever been. And because of some of these things where it just seems like adulthood is taking longer for this generation, it's sometimes frustrating. School is taking longer to finish. It's taking longer to find a career-type job as opposed to just working a job. It's taking longer to find a significant other or a spouse. Marriage rates are way higher later than they've ever been before. And so many other things. So it's easy to be frustrated, but it's not all doom and gloom with this generation. Just a couple of high points. This is the most educated generation in history here in America. Higher rates of graduation from high school, college, graduate school. There's more effort going into finding the education that they need in order to survive in this world. Also, they're very open to the role of mentors and adults in their lives. They highly respect parents, mentors, teachers, and really want to please them, and they really want to be able to learn from them. And so it's not all necessarily negative. One of the experts in the field, people who've done some of the most research on this emerging adulthood generation, is a guy named Dr. Jeffrey Arnett. And he talks about 5 characteristics of emerging adulthood. So I want to just briefly touch on those. The first one that he talks about, this age of 18 to 25-year-olds, is he calls it the age of identity exploration. Young people are becoming who they want to be. They're learning what it means to be an adult and figuring out what their values are. This is a little bit of a shift from previous generations. Often we've thought about adolescence as being the time when identity formation takes place, 13 to 18 years old. Now that's extending further, where maybe most of the physiological changes of adolescence have already occurred, but now the identity formation piece is extending later. And there's both pluses and minuses to that, and we'll talk about some of the pluses later on. It's also Arnett calls it the age of instability. Everything is in flux. For young adults, especially those who are really trying to make it on their own, there is so much instability. They're moving around from place to place. Friends are changing. School is changing. Maybe they're bouncing around from different job to job. Everything seems to be in flux. There's no solid base or solid foundation where they can kind of rest on and say, this is the way things are. This is the way things are supposed to be. It's all just a kind of a mishmash of change at this point in their lives. Arnett also calls it the age of self-focus. And that doesn't necessarily mean selfish or too focused on self, although there's some element of this generation being somewhat self-consumed. But more what he's talking about is this is the time that they're focusing on learning the things that they need to learn, becoming the people that they need to become, so that they can eventually look outward again. And so it's a healthy self-focus in the sense that they're focusing on becoming who they want to be. It's also called the age of in-between, or feeling in between. Lots of studies that have looked at the idea that emerging adults are not necessarily feeling like adults. They're asked, what does it mean to be an adult? And they say, well, I don't really feel like an adult, but I don't really feel like a kid anymore either. They're kind of in this in-between place that isn't either. And that's frustrating to them because they want to be treated like adults, and yet they also realize that they don't have the skills or capacities to be adults yet. And that's frustrating for parents and those who work with them as well. The fifth one is called the age of possibilities. This generation is highly, highly optimistic about their future. Like 90% of them believe they're eventually going to achieve what they want to achieve. They just believe that the future is wide open for them. They can become who they want to become. The downside of that is, as it's taking longer for them to achieve those things, they still feel that they can take over the world and do anything and become who they want to become. But there's a mix of anxiety and depression along with that as they see their expectations not being met. So there's this kind of confluence of two competing ideas of optimism and anxiety that really mess with the way they feel about themselves and about the world. So, question often I get asked is what do we do about this? How do we react to the fact that there's this new segment of emerging adults that is kind of in our mix? And I think there's a couple of potential responses. One person who studies this generation, a guy named Dr. Robert Epstein, he takes the stance that this is a problem, that the way this generation acts is all about entitlement, and they're not responsible, and there's so many flaws with this generation. He thinks that this is just almost a lost generation, that they've just been coddled, and it's just not going to change. And so his take is that we need to change the way we parent and the way we educate, and how to teach capacities and skills to younger generations so the next generation doesn't become like this generation. So essentially he sees emerging adulthood as a problem that needs to be solved. Others, and Arnett is one of those, just say, you know what, this is just the new reality. This is how society is going to be now. Adulthood is no longer marked by age 18. 18 is the new 13. And so let's look at how do we adjust our systems and structures and expectations in order to adjust to the fact that this is the new reality. So he would look at things like health insurance and the fact that that young people can stay on their parents' health insurance until age 26 as one of those adjustments that we've made. And so he would say all of us as parents and people who work with young adults, we need to realize that 18 is not the time when they're going to be independent anymore. Often 22 is not the time where they're going to be independent anymore. There are more things that need to happen, and we just need to be aware of that and recognize that that's how things are. For me, I would say that the truth is probably in the middle there. I think that maybe there are elements of problems with this generation, that things that we can change so that the future is not quite the same. But I also agree with Arnett that we need to, for this generation in particular, we need to accept that this is the new reality. We need to embrace it. We need to realize that kids are going to stay home longer, that kids are going to take longer to finish school, and all the rest. And that's okay, because I think that there's some plus sides to all of that. There's some opportunities for us with this new generation. Part of the big piece that I think is a real opportunity is the fact that since identity formation is taking place later, it's taking place in the early to mid-20s instead of simply in the adolescent years. And since young adults are staying home and being with their parents longer, particularly those of us who are involved in the faith communities, this is a big opportunity. Now, instead of young adults being out of the house at 18 or out of the house at 22, and then being left out in the world to sort of figure out their who they are and what they believe, what they value, sort of on their own. Now they're a little bit more safely at home, if you will. Parents have the opportunity to take longer to invest in their lives. Churches maybe have the opportunity to engage them in this young adult period when previously they would have, statistically at least, been absent from the church during this time. So I think we have some significant opportunities, particularly given the fact that that emerging adults really value the input of mentors and those who are older than them, have more experience than them. We have the opportunity to really speak into the lives of this generation as they're taking their time and figuring out who they are and what they want to become and what they're going to do with themselves. We're going to continue doing a few more of these videos talking about this generation and highlighting some different aspects of it. But for now, I just want to thank you for watching and look forward to hearing from you and your feedback and anything that we can do to help you as you wrestle with what to do with this generation or your children who are struggling in this generation or anything that we can do to help. Thanks.